Membrane Man back here for part 2 of the urinary system, and today we're going to go over a little bit more of the structure of the nephron. So to start out, I'm going to go immediately to the board for the look at the renal corpuscle, the very beginning of the nephron. So here we have the renal corpuscle, which is the very beginning of the nephron where the urinary system and cardiovascular system meet. And this is very important. So here we have where the afferent arteriole is, where the blood comes into the glomerulus, which is surrounded by the glomerular capsule. And then blood that isn't filtered through goes out the efferent arteriole. Now, this is where we get the filtration. In this visceral layer of the glomerular capsule, or the GC, mostly podocyte cells. Now these podocyte cells are very, very cool in the sense that they have these finger-like things sticking out of them, and what they do is they band together and create these filtration slits, and they're fibrous connective tissue, which is the slit membrane. Now this is very important because later on we'll go into what exactly gets through that filtration slit and what does not and continues in the blood. Now, and here we have the capsular space, or known as the Bowman's capsule, which is where an empty space is between the parietal layer, which is made up of simple squamous epithelium, and the glomerulus, or the visceral layer of the glomerular capsule. And from here, whatever is filtered through from A goes to B and continues down the nephron. And so now we can get into the three major processes of urine formation. And we're going to start out with the filtration. And the filtration happens first with the walls of the glomerular capillaries. And these are fenestrated, which means they have small windows in them, or holes, in which no cells can get through. Everything else does. And then we get to the base membrane of the glomerular capillaries, and these are made up of glycoproteins and fibrous proteins, and they restrict the movement of large plasma proteins. And then we have the podocytes, which I mentioned earlier, which kind of have those finger-like things causing a filtration slit where small ions and things can get through, and they restrict the movement of albumin. So, what exactly gets through? Plasma, which is the fluid portion of the blood, many small ions, some very small peptides and amino acids, but these are in trace amounts. And then 100% of glucose makes it through. However, we'll note later on in the urine tour that 100% of the glucose is going to be reabsorbed to put back in the blood, because as we know, our brain loves glucose. In fact, it's the only thing it really eats. And so we want to save as much glucose as we can. And so all of that glucose should be reabsorbed. And if we're seeing glucose in our urine, that means that there are some serious problems going on. And so now that filtration is through the first part, we can move to the second part, which is the reabsorption portion, which is very important in making urine. And so a lot of these things we are going to reabsorb into our body because we need it, such as H2O, calcium, potassium, those kind of ions. And so this is very, very important. And then we have the third part of urine formation, which is the secretion portion, where we're getting out those bad drugs and toxins, stuff that our body wants to get out. And so those are kind of the three major processes of urine formation, but most of it is the filtration and the reabsorption that we're really worried about. The secretion is important, of course, but one reason I say that reabsorption is one of the more important things is that water, and we'll kind of take a look at how much water is actually reabsorbed in the next video. So what exactly does urine equal? Well, urine is this equation essentially, which is urine/fluid filtered into the nephron plus substances secreted into the nephron from the body minus the substances that are reabsorbed. So now that we know what urine is, what is the chemical composition of urine? Well, approximately 95% is water, and the other 5%, about 5%, are solutes. Now, going from a higher to lower scale, we'll go over some of those solutes. The first on the list is urea, which is a product of amino acid breakdown. And then we have sodium and chloride, potassium, phosphate, sulfate, creatinine, and uric acid. And then much smaller amounts of calcium, magnesium, and bicarbonate. Now the pH range is approximately 4.6 to 8.0 with an average of 6. So it really has this wide pH range, and that's kind of the amazing thing about the kidneys, is the fact that they can go these distances to excrete these bad things from our body, which can fluctuate that pH. Now, one thing I do want to mention is because we do have all this water going into our urine, doesn't mean that a lot isn't getting reabsorbed, because really it is. In fact, our kidneys do such an efficient job of, when we are dehydrated, of taking that water out and concentrating our urine. But this is still the chemical composition in that case. But I want to really nail it into your head that H2O is really reabsorbed a lot, as much as the body can, just so we can retain that water. Now, there are some instances where we have been extremely hydrated that it is going to get rid of that water, that we don't need it, that we need to in fact lower our blood pressure. And that's kind of where we start seeing the difference of color. In a concentrated urine, it's going to be a nice deep yellow, and when we're really hydrated, it's going to be clear. That is because the more water we are putting into our urine because we are hydrated, the more it dilutes this 5% of solutes. And that's where you get that athletic saying of, you want your urine to be clear because that means you are hydrated, which is definitely the case. In the next video, we're going to be looking at the medical terminology of urine formation. And you're starting to see why that the urinary system is one of the most important systems in the body, especially if you're going into a medical career. You can start seeing if things are going wrong in the body, if there's just no glucose reabsorption or not retaining enough water, reabsorbing that water. And so stick around for that next video. And the video after that is the exciting Urine Tour 2016, where you'll see it all start coming together of where things are reabsorbed and secreted, and you'll really start getting that big picture of how urine is formed and how the body works in keeping us alive, and it's exciting stuff. So I can't wait for it. I hope you can't wait for it too, because the human anatomy and physiology is just some of the most exciting things out there. So that's it for this video. I'm Membrane Man.